I spent the last 20 years learning everything I could about nutrition, from biochemistry lectures and scientific journals to actually applying that knowledge and working with real clients. And today, I'm going to break down everything that actually matters so you can stop overthinking what you eat and start making real progress. Let's start with part one, what most people get wrong. First off, calories are not the enemy. The energy that is actually found in your food, it is going to, for the most part, govern your body weight. Speaking of govern, right now there are major governing bodies that are focusing on the wrong thing when it comes to health and nutrition. It's completely backwards, focusing on specific ingredients and avoiding specific types of food and nutrients to improve health, completely backwards. This typically means demonizing things like artificial sweeteners and seed oils and specific things, basically the individual choices you make, instead of how those choices add all up to overall dietary patterns and trends. This oversimplification of what's wrong is misleading, and it starts with thinking that the calories in our food don't matter, because they do. With that being said, healthy doesn't always mean helpful. Even nutrient-dense foods that can be health-promoting can be overeaten. So we need to take everything in context, especially for you as an individual with specific requirements and specific goals. Continuing on with what most people get wrong is that there's no optimal or perfect diet. Low carb, plant-based, keto, the Mediterranean diet, they can all work. The key is making sure that you execute the diet within the principles of the science of nutrition, many of which I'm going to go over today, as well as do it long enough to actually be able to stick with it and see some results. Supplements are not shortcuts. They can be helpful, but they're just tools, not magic. And despite what you've been led to believe, hormones are not the root of each and every problem. Most people are not gaining weight because of hormones. It's actually the other way around. Body fat, nutrition, sleep, and stress, they're all going to influence your hormones. And the good news is, when you change your habits and your lifestyle, your hormones will typically follow. If you've been chasing the thing that is missing in your nutrition or your diet, you're probably missing the forest for the trees. Part two, here's what matters the most about your nutrition, especially when it comes to your body composition. I want to focus on body composition today because that might be the one thing people misunderstand the most about nutrition and the relationship it has with their bodies or how they're made up. When we talk about body composition, we're referring to the actual tissues that our bodies are made up of. If we separated you out into two main things, we'd have lean body mass over here, which is going to include your muscle, water, and bone. And the rest would be body fat mass. And when we talk about improving your body composition, we typically talk about improving the ratio of these two things. And when it comes to influencing your body composition through the things that you eat and how you move, there are going to be many things that can change your body composition, but there are only going to be a few that matter the most. Of those things, and we've already talked about one of them today, calorie balance is going to influence this process the most. If you want to change the actual physical tissue in your body, you're going to need to change the balance between the amount of energy that comes in and the amount of energy that is burned. For the energy that comes in, we're going to talk about all the calories you consume through food and drink. And the calories that go out or are burned are going to be the amount of calories you burn at rest, just existing, which is your basal metabolic rate, the amount of energy you burn through digesting food, which is going to be the thermic effect of food, and lastly, all those little movements you do throughout the day that aren't really exercise. We call that your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, or sometimes spontaneous physical activity. It's all the little movements that you do without really realizing it. We're talking about toe tapping and fidgeting and kind of rustling around. You do that a lot, and all those calories add up. And strangely enough, all the calories you burn through those movements, it's going to be quite variable from person to person. And it can explain why some people have a hard time losing weight, while sometimes people have a really hard time gaining weight. All of these things that we burn, they all add up. Now, with that being said, the difference between the calories that go in and the calories go out are going to dictate if you gain tissue or lose tissue and where that tissue comes from. You can't overlook this balance if you actually want to understand what matters when it comes to your food and body composition. Next up, where these calories come from in your food do matter. So the nutrients in your food that supply calories are going to be the macronutrients, the large components of your food that we measure in grams that supply these calories. It's going to be protein, carbohydrates, and fat. If I could only tell you, in most cases, the one thing that you need to improve on in your diet to see better results, protein is going to be your secret weapon. Eating more protein helps regulate your appetite, because protein is the most filling macronutrient, as well as eating more protein will allow you to build more muscle through muscle protein synthesis, especially if you're training, which is going to be important for your overall health, performance, and longevity, as well as retain the muscle that you already do have. By eating more protein, if you're in a calorie deficit and trying to get leaner, the protein that you consume is going to spare the muscle that you already have. You see, when you get leaner, you're never losing pure body fat. It's always going to be a combination of the tissues that we've already talked about today. But you eat a little bit more protein and your body's going to burn that for energy instead of breaking down the muscle that you already do have, and therefore you retain more muscle on a diet. Now, protein is going to do a bunch of different things in your body, not just build new muscle. You may have heard the myth that you can only utilize 30 grams of protein every time you eat. That's a myth. When you eat protein, and it doesn't matter if it's 15 grams of protein, 30 grams of protein, or 60 grams of protein, your body digests and absorbs almost all of it. Now, it'll only use a certain amount to build new muscle, but that's okay because the rest doesn't really go to waste, even if it's burned off for energy. All of it is going to be utilized and not just for building new muscle. Think about this from an evolutionary standpoint. If we could only utilize 30 grams of protein in an individual sitting, our ancestors that were hunters and gatherers, they wouldn't have lasted very long. Because as they were hunting, they would kill an animal, utilize that meat, and they'd have to eat a lot of it in a sitting. If they could only use 30 grams of protein, they wouldn't have lasted very long. You can utilize a lot more. There probably is some diminishing returns, but don't get too wrapped into only being able to eat 30 grams of protein in a sitting. Lastly, of the macronutrients, protein is going to have the highest thermic effect of food, which means it takes the most energy to break down and utilize. So eating more of it is smart from a metabolic standpoint as well. Now, when it comes to exercise and improving your body composition, all exercise is good exercise, but if I had to pick one type, I would go with strength training over cardio. Improving your lean body mass and keeping it, especially as you age, is one of the smartest things you can do for your overall health, and that requires some resistance. It requires lifting some weights. You're gonna need that stimulus to build new muscle and keep the muscle that you already do have. So lift some weights at least 2 to 3 times per week. With that being said, if we really focus on what matters here, adherence or sticking to these principles matters much more than optimization. The best diet and the best training plan is going to be the one you can stick to for longer periods of time. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do things a bit more intense for spurts, like a challenge over certain periods of time in specific time frames. But for the most part, you need a floor. You need a baseline of things you do all the time to improve your health and maintain it. And that comes down to things and principles that you can stick to. The most optimized, perfect plans are going to fail when life gets in the way. So you got to find things and habits and strategies that you can do and you can utilize no matter what is happening in your life. Let's move on to part 3. Here's what the science actually says about nutrition and fitness. There are people out there that believe that you can actually get fat and gain weight by not eating enough food. And that's because they've bought into the notion of starvation mode, which is essentially the myth that if you don't eat enough food, your metabolism can crash and you'll gain weight. This doesn't happen and has never happened. Now, metabolic adaptation is real, which means through the process of dieting and losing some weight by a function of not eating as much food and being in a calorie deficit, your metabolism can slow down, but this effect is pretty small. Your body is going to adjust to the stress you're putting on it and the tissue that you're losing by moving around a smaller body, but that effect isn't as catastrophic as many people will lead you to believe. And this makes sense. If you think about less fortunate people that have less access to food, they are actually starving. They're not gaining weight. When you diet, when you get leaner, your metabolism will be impacted, but the trade-off is you typically have better health outcomes from being leaner, especially if you don't overdo things. Let's keep moving on. Seed oils, artificial sweeteners, not toxic. I can't believe I need to say this because 5 years ago, if you asked me if there's one thing that we could agree on in the nutrition space, it would probably be that fruits and vegetables were good for you. But the entire carnivore movement has thrown that idea out the window. But I'm here to say to you, you should be eating fruits and vegetables. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm anti-meat. It just means that what I'm saying, and what the science says as well, is that you shouldn't be anti-plant. Anti-plant, anti-plant, eat meat and fruits and or vegetables in a variety of sources in amounts that fit within your requirements and your needs to hit your goals. Make it balanced and good things will happen. Now, what else is trending out there? Now, your hormones matter, but they tend to follow your energy status and body composition. And your gut health is important. It does influence a lot about your overall health, but there's so much we still don't know about it, especially the gut bacteria that reside in your guts. For so many people, you should just focus on eating enough fiber, which is going to supply the bacteria in your guts with some energy and produce normal bowel movements. Poop, it's important to talk about in the nutrition space. And go see educated professionals if your problems or symptoms don't resolve through focusing on those, scientific based principles. Oh man, GLP-1s and weight loss drugs, they've come on the scene. What we know so far, they can be really helpful for people that struggle with their body weight and are obese to lose weight through regulating your appetite. When we study these drugs, they outperform calorie restriction alone by a wide margin, and many people can lose 15 to 20% of their body weight and keep it off through adding in these drugs. Now, that doesn't mean by taking the fat shot that someone is quote unquote cheating, or they don't need to focus on the important lifestyle things that are going to help them lose weight and keep it off. If anything, that becomes more important. Because your appetite is suppressed, you're not eating as much food, which means eating more protein and nutrient dense foods and building some habits around that become even more important, not less important. So if you're going down that path, make sure that you're focusing on both things. Now, with that being said, there's so much we can explore about what the science says about nutrition and health, but let me leave it at this. There's a big difference between what the science says is right and correct and true, and what is going to be helpful for you as an individual. There are certain things that people do that aren't going to be difference makers. They don't matter that much. And that's okay. Like taking branched chain amino acids, which are a supplemental form of protein, or fasted cardio, or using a weighted vest for your walks. These things alone aren't going to be the thing that changes everything for you, even if they're marketed that way. But that's okay. If they help you get excited about the process and sticking to the things that you need to be doing for longer, then you should keep doing them. If by doing something that isn't quote unquote effective, but it isn't harmful, but it also keeps you in the game for longer, keep doing it. I could keep going on and on about this stuff and what the science says for a much longer period of time, but I'm going to move on. If I should do a rapid question and answer period, let me know in the comments below and I'll do another video. Let's talk about part 4. What changes long-term health? For the most part, moving towards a healthy body weight and whatever that means for you on an individual level and some stability around that is always going to be better than extreme weight loss and not being able to keep that off. In most cases, improving your nutrition and body weight is also going to improve things like your blood sugar, your blood lipids, as well as your blood pressure. So make sure you're doing the healthy lifestyle things to improve your overall health, and typically those biomarkers will follow. With that being said, in so many cases, food is fuel, and we should look to it for that. But at the end of the day, food is also cultural and social and fun, and there is always a time and a place for everything. And if you focus just as much on recovery and sleep and taking care of yourself, also managing stress, and also improving your social connections and living with a purpose, you're gonna improve your overall health just as much as what you consume. Part 5, here's what I wish everyone knew about nutrition. Consistency and doing the things that matter are always going to trump novelty. I spent so much time, especially earlier in my career, in my health journey, chasing hacks and the thing that would change everything, only to completely overlook the things that I need to be doing. For the most part, I didn't even know them yet. No diet hack is gonna replace daily action. So focus on eating enough protein, eating a total amount of food that falls in line with your goals, and doing that over and over, and you will see results. And you can't hate yourself into change. It might be okay to dislike where you're at right now, but you also should appreciate what your body can do and find balance between being content with where you are, what you've achieved so far, and being hungry for where you want to go. That's the path forward. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to make choices that matter, do the best you can with what you have, and especially in different phases of life, and things will move in the right direction. And that's it, folks. That's 20 years of nutrition knowledge squeezed into one short YouTube video. And if I could leave you with anything, I want to leave you with this. Nutrition isn't about finding that magical thing. It's not about finding the answer. It's about finding the thing and the approach and the strategy and the overall lifestyle or pattern that's going to allow you to stack some wins. Now, as helpful as this information can be, I want to put it together to you in one simple cheat sheet. You can find that down in the first link in the description below. Download it and start putting this stuff into action. And if you're completely new to the channel today, I'd love it if you could like this video and make sure to subscribe. I put out more nutrition, fitness, and health and coaching content on a weekly basis. You're gonna love it. With that being said, if you enjoyed today's video, you're gonna love this video I've linked up right here. Today, we talked all about the science of nutrition and the knowledge I've accumulated over the last 20 years. In this video, I'm gonna debunk the myth around the 1,200 calorie diet. You're gonna learn all about that in this video right here. So check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video.